Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, is my co-hostess, Vanessa Hogel. And down in the chat room, our chat moderator, Quarantine Ghost, moderating the chat. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight. Justin Brown is back in the house. He has a brand new documentary out there on haunted Hartford City. It's an extremely haunted town out in Indiana. I've had the pleasure of investigating out there before. Justin's work is absolutely fantastic. Of course, we've had him on here before talking about equipment, which he's very knowledgeable about. But we're going to be diving into this documentary, these haunted locations, this paranormal investigations. Justin, welcome to the show.
Unmute. Thank you. It's awesome. I have to unmute because I have a gaming keyboard that clicks like it's not cool. So thanks. I'm glad to be on here. I know that, you have to push me. You had to fit me in after, a couple months after I asked, but I'm glad to be here and I'm ready to answer your questions.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, let's get into it. So the documentary is Haunted Hartford City. It's out there in, I guess it's the eastern side of Indiana. People may recognize the house, the Monroe House, but there's actually several locations here that are very haunted, and you had the opportunity to explore and investigate several of these. So you want to kind of give us a brief rundown, then maybe we can hit like each location individually?
Yeah, to give you an understanding of my familiarity and access to these locations, I pretty much had the keys to the paranormal for Hartford City for 2 years. And the locations I had were Monroe House, the old Blackford County Jail, both Dan Allen's locations, which in the jail, and the Irvin Campbell Speakeasy building. And Brandy Reeder got me into the Griffin's Blind Tiger, which was formerly Centerfield Bar, which was other things that you will hear about in the documentary if you watch. But it all came to be because we were looking into locations in Indiana, and we saw a few of our peers out there, doing investigations at the jail, the old Blackford County Jail, which is owned by Dan Allen. And we went up there, told him that we want to do an episode for a YouTube series. He's like, yeah, great. I love that. So come on over. We did the investigation. We tried to do a commercial film just about the jail. And there was a few things that actually stopped that from happening. We got it to Blu-ray. We got it on our website, and then we had to take it down because of legal matters with former members. But we still had the footage without the stuff that was making it a question of privacy, illegality there. So we got that, and then we got the Irvin Campbell Speakeasy. And then we wanted to do the Monroe House. It's only a block away from the jail. This is a very small town. The locations we investigated are within 1 to 2 city blocks of each other. So we wanted to do a documentary. We did these locations individually, that we released videos of individually, but I had a vision for a documentary that encompassed the whole town and pretty much showcased the 4 locations that I had access to for 2 years. So I had all this footage, all these connections. They gave this stuff to me free of charge. They did not charge me to come in and do these things. They gave it to me just to say, hey, do what you do. And I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity because they believed in the work we were doing. They knew that we would not only shed light on the history and not let the creepy paranormal claims overshadow the tremendous history and heritage of the place, but do it in a way that was integral and classy and cool. So I was like, yay, I get to do this. And not everybody gets to, but I pretty much took all this footage from all these investigations and turned them into a documentary that you will see on the website if you go and rent it. Mike and Vanessa has saw it, so they can kind of do a proper interview on it, so they can ask me questions. I'm glad that they did, because I'm like, oh, I forgot to send a link.
Yeah. How can people find this documentary?
Interfacedeath.net is our website. Go to the homepage. The link is there. It'll direct you to the videos tab. If you want to rent it, you just go to the Interface Death Watch channel at the top of the videos page. You click on it, you have to sign in. I'm sorry, Wix makes you do this. You have to sign in, and then you can have the option to either purchase a download and watch it unlimited times on the website, or you can just rent it for 3 days for $5, or you can get a Blu-ray, which is like $20. And if you're watching during the show, I will make a discount code for everybody watching this to get $5 off of that if they want.
I want to start out here. First, I have to touch on something that I think is really important for any investigators, filmers, people that are going into this that want to do this at a later date. You talked about not being able to do certain things due to former team members. Again, this is one of the things that you and I were talking about before the show. Documentation. Whomever is the team leader, everybody under them has to sign off. That way, if they ever leave, you can still sell it. You can still do that. That is really important, and I don't think that people think about that because they're like, "Oh, that's my buddy. We're good. We're like this." It doesn't work that way. Okay, nope. That doesn't work that way. So that disclaimer is out. But I got a teeny tiny bone to pick.
Okay, I figured.
I do. The Monroe House. Okay. Not all witchcraft is bad. And that was the only thing that when you're talking about the Monroe House and things that have happened there, when we throw in witchcraft, I wish that there had been some separation between the negative and the positive, because that is the only thing that really bothers me, is because I feel like people say the word witchcraft associated with a place like that, and then all of a sudden we're all evil demon worshipers.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I think that when you go in and do an investigation of these locations, that a lot of those type of things like witchcraft and any type of esoteric beliefs or religion's way of life will get like a paranormal or like an umbrella term, like witchcraft's an umbrella term. And it's kind of like you said, there was witchcraft performed to this house. So, a lot of people would tend to believe that they were doing dark things associated with the witchcraft. I don't always think of doing disclaimers like that in documentaries, but there are people going to say, well, not all witchcraft is bad and not all witchcraft causes demon houses. But what I think happened was it kind of got thrown into the salad of paranormal claims, and the location was just one thing to add to does this have anything to do with what's going on that people are experiencing, that the owner experienced, that other investigator experienced? Does it have anything to do with the haunting? And according to my mother, hundreds of other, maybe thousands of other people, maybe and probably. But the kind of witchcraft performed there was not elaborated on. So I don't know.
More than likely, it was neo-Wiccan, prepubescent, or teenagers or young adults that were pissed off at life and decided that they wanted to claim themselves to be a witch. And let's face it. Let's just go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. 9 times out of 10, when you go into any one of these locations and they have a pentagram or an upside pentagram painted on the wall or something, not that the Monroe House did, but or something like that, and people talk about rituals were done there. No, bored teenagers were done there. That is not a true depiction of what we are. So that was my only thing, and I don't want to go off on a tangent.
Do you feel like that's how I went about, like?
No,
but it could have been. I didn't go either way with it. So
exactly
is what you're saying. Well, yes. I'll have to keep that in mind. I'm trying to make my film short, Vanessa. Thanks a lot. That doesn't help.
But I really enjoyed it. I do wish that the particular bad incident that happened I do wish that footage would have been shown. But I also understand, based on my previous experiences and
which are you talking about?
The screaming,
there was no video. There was no video available.
Yeah, that was all audio from. Was it their previous investigation of it? Was that?
A gal named Deb Schneider from Fort Wayne, Indiana, had done an investigation at the Monroe House, and she had an experience that they happened to have an audio recording at the time. And she was skeptical. She was like, I don't know if this is a possession. It didn't feel like possession. It felt like I was being jumped or something along that line. I want she was giving it to other people to see if it was peer reviewable. And I felt like people have experiences, and I felt like it was raw enough and honest enough and sincere enough to present it in the documentary, because when I listened to it, it didn't feel fake. It felt authentic, and it felt like she truly believed something was happening to her. And I put it in there.
She was chosen for a reason. She was chosen to have that attack on her for a reason. And so that's what the most important thing is. And only she knows that reason. So it felt very authentic to me. It would have, and knowing now you didn't have video, that makes a lot more sense. But I'm like, man, it's not that I needed to see it for any type of immediate gratification, but having been through it myself and having watched my best friend go through it and me being the one to pull her out of it, I know how important it is to share those experiences so that people can see what actually happens and realize this is not Ghost Adventures. This isn't GA. This isn't Hollywood. It's not pretty. It sucks sometimes.
Mike, should we give any context about what we're talking about?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay. I felt like we need to.
Yeah.
It just felt like an inside thing.
Trying to get them to watch it.
Okay. Well, this is why you
need a
should
little
watch
context. Yes.
So Deb Schneider agreed to be a part of this film. I interviewed her about her experience and her investigation at the Monroe House, which is the third act of the documentary. She had an experience there that on the surface you would probably say, oh, it looks like a possession, but we don't present it like that. I definitely don't want to leave that in people's minds or even hint that it was. I told her I felt like she was reliving someone's attack, a woman's attack from someone. That's what it absolutely sounded to me. And there's definitely evidence and claims of women being abused documented in that location, amongst pick and choose all the horrible things that happened at this place that have been documented and are true. So if you watch that third act and you listen to that, I don't know what it's 2 or 3 minutes.
Got that.
Yeah.
And I provide B-roll over. It's almost like a Hitchcockian moment where you don't see what's happening. You're only hearing it, and you're seeing B-roll of the location.
There's some creepy B-roll that goes along with it.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of sound design, but I try to keep it raw. I try to make it the main part of that segment. And when I first listened to it, it disturbed me.
Yeah.
And I want people to understand that this can happen to you, especially at the Monroe House. If you're a woman, if you're an empath, if you have abilities, if you're opening yourself up to these type of things, that could be you. And that's what I was trying to do in the film. But I wanted to try to paint or shed or make Deb seem like she wasn't someone who was trying to dabble into things she shouldn't have. Like during the interview, I kind of made it look like we either consciously or subconsciously go out looking for these experiences to learn from them, whether it be something you disagree with or not. We ultimately want to learn through these experiences. And like you said, it happened to her for a reason. I do believe that these things do happen for reasons. And it did, provide her with, some information she probably used in her life to do other things.
Exactly. You didn't portray her wrong. It did not come off wrong. It didn't come off as sensationalized. It didn't come off as being possessed or something demonic. It didn't do any of those things. It was very well done. So, I mean, hats off.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, because I would have told you.
Well, that's what, when I knew I was going to do this show, I'm like, she's going to have something to say, and I hope it's mostly good.
She usually does, but I did want to ask you about some of these artifacts that were found there. So, like this small sack with a necklace and human hair. There were some shorts with blood that were found. So, these are unusual things to find, at somebody's house like that. So, what in your research and in your investigations were you able to determine about these artifacts?
Well, pretty much all the research was done by the owner of the Monroe House's sister-in-law. Eddie Norris owns it, and his wife Pam's sister pretty much found all the documentation that he was able to connect with a serial killer that had a connection to the house. So what he believes is either associated with a documented serial killer that's in prison right now, that's involved with 40 known deaths or murders, maybe possibly more. He told me not to give any names.
Right.
And he felt like they, if not belonging, like, trophies of a serial killer, what are they? Could be ritualistic. Maybe Vanessa would have some feedback on those things. I feel like it's definitely odd that those were kept in the crawl space in that fashion that he said that he found them. They were like wrapped up and like kept there. It wasn't just like something random buried in the dirt in the basement.
If they were used for ritualistic purposes, they would be used for a hexing or a cursing. But the thing is that it for a hex or a curse, it takes continuous energy to go into something like that. So if there is no longer anybody putting that energy into it, there is no longer a hex or a curse. And that's, a lot of people really misconstrue that. They think, oh, you're cursed once and bada bing. Doesn't work that way.
It's interesting that you say that. I got a question based on that statement. The fact that he's presenting this stuff and kind of creating a model or a story, what he believes these things are connected to, and people go there thinking and believing that these things are true. Is that enough energy to keep refueling? Not
necessarily, because they would have to know who the subject was.
Okay.
Yes, they would have to know who the subject was. That is another misconception, just by the masses. You have to have a name or a picture or something that ties that particular hex or curse to an individual. Okay.
What about hair or blood?
Not necessarily. Because blood, let's face it, entire family lines they share the same blood. So if
the blood on the shorts, that's what I was talking about.
The blood on the shorts, you mean for a hexing or a curse?
Well, you were talking about having a photo or having something.
It's more being able to see the person's face. It really is. It's knowing exactly who you're trying to hex or curse.
So there has to be some kind of focus.
There really does. There really does. I'm leaning more towards a serial killer, but that leads into an additional question. If there is a possibility that even though this person is in prison, even though that's a possibility, has this evidence been presented to the police so that they can do any type of DNA testing to see if they were tied to that serial killer, and if this is maybe a victim that they were not aware of, and so that maybe they can give a family closure?
What I was told, and this involves many things, even the remains found in the basement and all these other things, that the law enforcement has already incarcerated this person after they found it. So they would have to reopen the investigation and then indict him again. And he's already in prison for life, like 40 life terms. And I think they said that they just didn't want to deal with the paperwork and they already got him. So I think that they didn't see like it was connected to a victim, like a particular victim. You know what I'm saying? I think for what he said off camera was those shorts weren't connected to a particular victim they were trying to find the murderer for.
I have an ex-husband in law enforcement, and that is not accurate.
Well, the people in that town, you need to go there to kind of understand. Mike can kind of shed some light on small town Indiana law enforcement if you want.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
They looked into the crawl space, looked at the bones for a couple minutes, said, "Looks like animal bones," and they left.
Yeah, that's usually the way it works. It usually is. Oh, it's just animal bone, and there you go. They might bag it and take it away and say they're going to test it, but it rarely ever does. So
Right.
Wow.
they just, well, I mean, really, a small town like that, they don't have the resources to, do all
No,
the
that's
testing
why
and
you
all
send
that.
it to
So
the FBI and they have a missing persons
they're not
database.
gonna do that. Yeah.
I wish they would, because it
Yeah.
would give us the information that we're wanting. We want the information to tell the story about the things.
Yeah, and
But
Vanessa, the reason why they're not going to bring in the FBI is everybody gets butthurt over jurisdiction. They don't want the Phoebes down there in their territory.
That is really fucked up. Sorry,
Yeah.
because that would give a family closure.
Well,
And that,
from
that
what he
should
said,
trump everything else.
it wasn't connected. There wasn't any people that they could connect to it. That's what he has said.
That I'm gonna shut up now.
So if they would have done like analysis on the blood, for example, they wouldn't have found it to connect it with a victim, and the hair, for example.
That they're aware of.
But if they would have handed it over to the FBI to put in their system, they may have. Like you're
Exactly
saying.
right. And a family would have closure. Fuck being able to prosecute the guy again. Who gives a dick about that? Wow. Okay, I'm done. I'm just a little bit in shock right now. I'm a little bit in shock. I'm a little bit stressed about that. So I'm just gonna chill.
That's all good.
Yeah.
But speaking of law enforcement, you also did investigate the old jail there, which I've been in there twice. Actually, slept overnight in one of the cells one time. It's a really interesting location. I actually love the basement area, the little kind of quote unquote dungeon area.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me about your experiences there.
Is very interesting. Those type of jails have almost like the front of it is living quarters. There's bedrooms. There's a kitchen. Back then, the warden or the sheriff had to live at the facility in order. It was actually law back then. So you had complete control of that jail at all times. So.
Wow.
They had families living in there with them, wife, kids. They would have like political figures come by. There was a guest room, really nice guest room. I think Dan actually sleeps in the political guest room, which is in the top right window up there, that actually has a bathroom in. My mother even picked up that people of high status politically stayed there in that room.
Wow.
And they live there. And when you go there, there's psychics that pick up on children and families there. There's people that like hear kids and pick up, maybe supporting evidence that, there are energies there that involve children. So there's that. On the back part of it, there's a, what is it, Mike? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cells. The very back right one was used for a shower.
Yeah.
But that turnstile you see there, Dan said that he thinks that's one of 7 left in the U.S. I know the other one that's bigger in the West Virginia Penitentiary. That's another one that I know about, but I don't know the other 5. But I don't know if that information's true or not. So if anybody has any information of how many turnstiles are left, I would love to know.
And I love that turnstile. I would have that in a house.
Oh, it's
That would
definitely
be
very
crazy.
cool. Yeah.
I'm
It
not
is cool.
lying. It's awesome.
But the walls are made out of like 2-foot granite. I mean, this thing is like freaking sturdy.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that.
It was pretty much impenetrable, and he talks about how the only way anybody was ever able to escape is because of the ventilation that they ended up putting in after the fact. That
Yeah,
the original
that grate.
plan. Yeah, the grate that goes down. The original plans, it was basically impenetrable because you're not getting through that granite.
Nope. If Shawshank is not going to apply.
Yeah,
I
Shawshank
did
or
love
Escape
the
from
reference.
Alcatraz or whatever. Yeah,
Right.
I love
But
the reference to that.
It's really cool because there's not very many of these jails left, and Dan gets to keep this. People in the paranormal community is pretty much financing him to keep this. I know he's well off, but I'm sure that it would be a lot worse looking if the paranormal community wasn't helping him finance the upkeep of this place. And it is still very nice. Sometimes he does have cats in there, and it's a job to keep the cats cleaned up after, because sometimes you go on vacations. But other than that, it's a very nice location that I urge anybody to go check out. But to kind of wrap a bow around that question, Mike, it's multifaceted like jails can be, but there's an element to it that you wouldn't get like if you're at a prison. because it's got that lived in feel on the front of it. And there, you might, have experiences that don't seem very jail or prison like there.
Well, that explains a lot, because when I was watching it was very bizarre, because I had the image of a man that was in one of those jail cells that looked like he should be running a bank instead of being in the jail cell. He actually considered himself above everybody else that was in there, and he had that mannerism about him as well. But inside him was inherently evil.
Okay, so I have a lot of documentation of people that were incarcerated there. Maybe I can thumb through it. He sits
with his legs crossed and his hand like this with a cigarette in it.
Well, John Dillinger was believed to be incarcerated there?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm asking Mike because
I believe he was kept there for a short period of time. The story as the story goes. So,
so that's part of the lore.
Yeah, if that's him, but very uppity. Everybody else was a criminal. He just got caught.
Yeah, there definitely could have been somebody that would fit that description being incarcerated there. But there was 3 sheriffs that passed away in the jail and the living quarters area. I think it's that bottom room where he has his desk and computer is the place where the bedroom the sheriff actually slept. There was a couple killings in the jail area itself. There's a story associated with that, but we'll save that for the documentary when you watch it.
Right.
Hopefully you watch it. I'll probably it'll probably flop, and I'll just make it public on YouTube and cry a little bit, but I just want people to watch it.
It's a great documentary. You got a lot of great information in there. The interviews are really well done. You have wonderful locations like this, and one of the things I love about this jail is the basement dungeon area. And I don't know how much. I mean, you see some snippets in the documentary. I don't know how much overall you got to investigate.
There's a lot of it that didn't make it in, Mike.
Right.
We definitely had our main piece of really cool evidence was involving the people we didn't have video consent signed.
Okay.
So that didn't make it. We, me and Josh and a former member was down there. We had a little bit of experiences, but I was just trying to, I had a story and I had to, split it up in acts. I had all this content and I tried to, only get the really bizarre thing that it involved the former members in there.
It's tough, isn't it? I don't think people understand how difficult it is putting one of these together. Bless Gwen for doing most of ours. So hats off to you.
It's an acquired thing.
That's a very PC way to put it,
So,
Justin.
yeah.
It sucks, Vanessa.
It does.
So before we get into a couple of the other locations, we do have some questions here from the chat room. So Judy Wilson was wondering what makes Hartford City so haunted.
That's one of the best questions you can ask about it. In my opinion, I think I speak about in the intro of the documentary. Paranormal investigators try to create a model of what a recipe for hauntings are. And it is my opinion that the whole town is a recipe for a haunting. And here's the things that I believe that are recipes for it. You take a place that hasn't really changed over a long period of time since its conception to now. You're starting to see some old buildings get tore down now, but it took a long time. But some of the main historical buildings are still there and kept unchanged. It's a small rural town, so the economy there is not good in that area. So you have disparaged economy. You have a lot of people, since the economy's bad, the living, just the overall neighborhood can be run down and the income's low. So that breeds a lot of psychokinetic fuel that we believe that can, create poltergeist. It can create all these paranormal phenomena to occur. You have the historical structures, like I said, and you have the proximity of these locations that might be harboring hauntings that we hope we found supporting evidence of, really close to each other. So the smaller the location is, I guess the more concentrated ground zero can be. So Hartford City, what do you think, Mike? Maybe like 5,000 people live there.
Yeah, it's a small town.
Yeah, like $5,000, like that's small.
Yeah.
So and it's isolated. It's very rural. The land's very flat. So what I've experienced in my life is when you have a very flat, very rural area, energy is not. It can do what it wants to and not be influenced or impeded or mitigated by the land and how it flows. And that's just my feeling. I didn't read that anywhere. I just get that.
Also, when you're talking about rural areas like that and bad economy and everything else, and you wouldn't think this is the case, but it is. You also have higher levels of substance abuse and alcohol.
That's what I'm alluding to. You know,
Yes.
with that comes all these things that we think, you know, are recipes for hauntings, you know, like suicides, drug abuse, incarceration, spousal abuse, domestic abuse, everything like that. So I'm trying to paint a picture of a psychokinetic ground zero, and that is Hartford City. And that's kind of like the model I try to, you know, construct in the film.
Let's go ahead and just address another elephant in the room that nobody ever talks about, but you have a higher level of promiscuity amongst younger people. And you're more apt to have higher levels of poltergeist activity around young girls, especially when they start their cycles. And if you go to a small town like that and there's nothing else to do, guess what you're doing?
That's why I feel like it's so concentrated in those places. And it's, you know, and I think the geography, I really want to, you know, emphasize on that. The geography is very important with the geomagnetics, the way the terrain is laid out, how much limestone, how much of this mineral, how much of this, all that. I mean, I would love to do more research into that. I just don't have the time or resources or the money to do that. But I feel like there's something there that we could definitely learn more about if we could, you know, do that.
Agreed.
Yeah, and there's also, you know, the stories of different mob connections throughout Hartford City back in the day. So you think that kind of plays into it as well?
Yeah, the history does play into it, but not everything in history creates hauntings.
Well, sure.
Or we would be in trouble, right? So I feel like...
But there's an energy that's left
I feel
over
like
from
the
that.
psychokinetics, okay, the PK. If you don't know what that is, it's cool. Go read about it. But the retelling and the fuel that we give these stories through the tours and the investigations, and when you come through, they have to have something going on. You know, it looks historic when you go through the courthouse. Looks cool. You know, the overall feel, it gives you like a historic feel. So if you live there, history is pretty much only thing that's positive about the place. So you get these stories and you get these retelling of the stories and you get these things, you know, I feel has something to do with, you know, actually fueling the hauntings, like maybe what Mike was alluding to, like the history of John Dillinger at the old Blackford County Jail, the Monroe House, and all the history associated with that. I mean, we're creating a paranormal soup of wonderful, spontaneous things to occur that we barely understand, and that's why people flock there to try to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you investigated the Speakeasy there, so which doesn't feature very prominently in the documentary, but I think it's a pretty cool location. Kind of speaks again to, you know, the history of the location. So what happened in your experiences there? Because it doesn't sound like a whole heck of a lot did happen.
Not a lot, and I wish that I could have found at least 10 minutes to add some footage from there, but just not. I didn't feel like what we had from that location stood up to all the other things. So it just got the chopping block. But I did mention it, and I did say it wasn't the most active. Maybe if you go there, it'll be more active. You get it as a bonus location if you investigate the jail. Dan allows you to go over there and investigate it. So that's something that you don't have to worry about investing something and nothing happens.
Yeah, it's an interesting little place.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
Because you know, it is kind of hit or miss there. You know, we spent, several hours in the Speakeasy. We did the jail, did the Speakeasy, jail again.
I don't want to
another
see you
time.
body slam the owner at all,
Oh,
because I think that's what she would do.
right.
Me?
Yes.
Wouldn't be the first time.
I love Eddie. You talk to the guy, super nice, probably too nice. He claims to be scientific and skeptical, but he can't because the Monroe House, and he doesn't understand it from a metaphysical, empathic point of view. And might be an issue with that, with you and him. I don't know if he can understand it or will allow himself to, because it's very troubling to him. It's like, whoa, that's too much. So it's there. And he did say in the film that he wanted to turn the Monroe House into a museum and build a catacombs. Yeah. See what I'm saying? So it's crazy. Okay. That whole scenario is crazy. And there's a whole bunch of things that aren't said in the documentary that, I did release a film called A Haunting on Monroe Street that anybody can watch on my YouTube channel. And it features what I did was, I'm like, hey mom, like I was estranged from my mother for 10 years. And then we got back together the last 3 years. But in 2018, I'm like, hey mom, I'm doing these documentaries of these paranormal investigations. Me and my mom's been dealing with this our whole lives. She is who she is. So I'm like, I'm going to see if I take my mom up there, not telling her I'm taking her up there beforehand, not telling her where we're going, not telling her jack shit, and see what happens. And that film is pretty much her, what she picks up on and what happened on the YouTube channel. And you see bits of that in the film, in the documentary that we go back to. But there was several things that happened during that initial investigation that I allow her to go through that still disturb me. And I feel like no matter what you do, what things you try to correct, what things you try to cleanse, what things you try to realign and readjust and fix, that there's something so against that occurring, it may overpower. Like, it would have to be a war. We'd have to wage war against the forces that are keeping that location the way it is. And I think that it might be too exhausting for most people to do.
Okay, let's 2 seconds to touch on that. I wouldn't go in there with the intention to cleanse or change or even understand. As long as that house is not going to be inhabited by a family or anybody else as a regular lodging, as a regular home, it can stay exactly as it is. And I think that's where people get crossed, is they think that when they come upon a place like that, they've got to fix it. No, you don't have to fix it. You have to document it.
Well,
that is all you need to do. Document.
There was something that was brought to my attention when we were first there with my mom and my paranormal group. It's in the video, the first video, so I'll just say it. She said that there was not only children, but people of all ages being collected in the basement by an entity. And I cannot just let that go. Like, I have to at least do something to sleep at night, whether it does any good or matters. I don't know if me just saying that to justify not doing something would make me not do it. But I feel like there are going to be certain people, like I did, would feel inclined to want to do something, because there's always people commenting. There's always people saying, oh, you go in these locations, these horrible things, they're happening to these spirits. Why don't you do something or try to do something?
Because they don't know dick. And I can say that with great authority because I've been in that situation. I've actually stood inside a people barn with a fucking demon on spread eagle on the top of the barn, and that's exactly what they was doing. Gwen's in the chat right now. She can confirm this. I don't give a shit how much I've got my stuff together, how powerful I am, what spells I can do, how psychic or empathic I am. I am no match for what is holding those spirits there. And I know that. So my job and Gwen's job when we were in that situation was to keep anybody else from going to it, trying to block the family from going to it. Sometimes that's all you can do.
Even other investigators.
Yes.
So you think we should do that at the Monroe House?
No. This was this specific place. I'm not convinced the Monroe House has demonic activity. I'm convinced.
Okay. Well, I felt that there's something I could do in that situation. Me and my mother both felt like, and this is based on belief. There's no proof that we did or did not, or that was occurring. This is just all based on belief. Mm-hmm. So we can say whatever we want about it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. So I felt like that place being kept the way it is and just sitting back with the camera, like I cannot do that. Even if it's David and Goliath, I'm the type of person that's just going to go up there and get my ass kicked. Mm-hmm. I'm going to see if I'm going to get my ass kicked.
You can do that, but can you? But when it doesn't,
people can do that.
We've all done that, but when it comes right down to it, are you going to keep going to get your ass kicked?
It's a good question. That place is almost like it's almost like if you punch one of those little moles down the hole, 3 of them pop up.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really thinking about that at the time. I just felt like this is unjustified. If I can do something, I will. I was just, it was like in the most sympathetic, empathic thing to do at the time. But stepping outside of it, not attaching your emotions and feelings to it. Yes, you can look at it and say, well, it's really, futile. So it just depends.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not an exercise in futility to want to do something. It isn't.
Okay,
and you want to do it all day long, but it doesn't always work in that favor.
All right. Well, we do have some questions coming in from the chat specifically about the Monroe. Specifically about the Monroe House, because you kind of threw it out there. So Judy Wilson and even some others down there asking, is there a demonic spirit there? And if so, why do you think so?
If you want there to be, something can present itself to be. Is there? Is the most interesting question. Is there demonic forces? Is there a devil? Can external evil forces exist, and can it affect us? And this is my view on that. Anything that we believe, think, anything religious, anything theological can exist in a certain way. Okay? Can it affect us in a physical way, an emotional way, in a psychological way? Yes. But to say it objectively exists, like we can see Mike and Vanessa and Justin on the screen, it doesn't work like that in my thinking, in my belief. And there's many beliefs out there. So if you want to go to the Monroe House and perceive that as demonic, you definitely could. But the way I view it, things are very psychokinetic and morphic. And the way witchcraft, magic, and occultism works is you are manipulating and manifesting your intention and your will. And in that place, it's amplified. For whatever reason, we can speculate all day long. So if you want to go in there and believe that Satan's there ready to get you, by all means, that's what you're going to get. But objectively, I don't believe so. I believe that it's like a holodeck on the Star Trek Enterprise.
That's what you make of it.
Yes.
Okay. Is the house that's standing there right now the original structure, or has it been altered at all?
The original structure got burnt down. We're not entirely sure if portion of it was salvaged and built onto. It probably was completely rebuilt, and then there was another fire. It's been added onto as a duplex and even more add-ons to it. It's a whole mess, Vanessa. It's like a
the original blueprints? Can you get the original blueprints to lay out of the house? Because that's where your answer lies.
No, that is not available.
So Tom McNicholas is wondering, how did the neighbors feel about the house? Any idea?
I did not canvass the neighborhood. I didn't have time. It would have been interesting to do that. You always see neighborhood kids running around trying to look in. That's why he's covered all the windows so you can't.
Right.
He's got surveillance cameras up. He tries to stop people from doing that. I'm pretty sure that the whole freaking town has more problems to deal with than the Monroe House. But when you start investing into the Monroe House, then I think you could ask that question, what do you think about it? Because you could just drive by it, maybe even live by it, and nothing would happen. And as far as I can see, all the grass is growing, the people are living normal lives. So I think it would be hard to determine if they were actually, whether they believe it or not, being affected by it. But that is a good question. I think it would be valuable to canvass the neighborhood to see what they would actually say.
It would definitely be interesting, in a couple of different ways, not only from, the activity that's going on at the house, but also because of the attention that it's gotten is probably, changed the dynamics of the neighborhood.
Absolutely. Like, it's kind of like an eyesore in a way. It doesn't look beautiful sitting there.
Yeah. WOA is wondering, so the entity collecting the souls, seems to me spirits can still be manipulated psychologically. So there's a question there.
Energy can be. Whether you believe those are actual souls is debatable. I think that Vanessa, can you help me?
I would love to. What do you need, love?
So when it comes to soul collecting entities, can you kind of help me explain in your words? Because how I would explain it is I don't view souls as other people would view souls in this sense.
Okay, so basically, when you're talking about a soul collector, in the situation that you're talking about, or what Gwen and I dealt with in Virginia, it is a collection of innocence. And that is the best way that I can describe it, is when you're talking about the energy that somebody's innocence gives off, that everything that makes them human and loving and kind, something negative feeds off of that. They have to have that. And when you have a soul collector, that is what they do. They hold on to that energy and they feed off of it, and they don't let it go. That is the best, most layman's term way I can explain
and
that.
To add to that, right. And to add to that, sensitive psychics and even the lay person can go in there and see something and perceive something that absolutely looks like a soul, a discarnate being of a deceased person, which in fact, it's not exactly in our view, the way we view it. And then I think most people in the paranormal field that are looking at metaphysics like this and parapsychology like this is on the same table with, they're not entirely sure what we're experiencing is actually what we think it is. It's way more crazy.
Yep. And the more that you get involved with it, and the more that you delve into your own psyche and figure out why you do the things in the Matrix.
We're in the Matrix.
The more descriptive and clearer the picture becomes. And that's when it really gets fucked up. So, good luck.
Nice. Yeah. So, Justin, Kathy Salento is wondering, while working in this field, have you ever encountered anything that changed you in any way?
Absolutely, but it was way before I was playing Ghost Hunter. Yeah, I got a story. I'll try to be quick. I know it's only an hour show. My mom and dad bought a house in Southern Ohio in Hillsboro from a local firefighter. He sold it to us, moved out to a farm outside of town. And we lived in that house for a year. After that year, coincidentally, he discovered, based on what I know, I'm not saying this absolutely happened, but he did kill himself. And what I heard was he found out his wife was cheating on him. So strangely enough, when this happened, when he committed suicide, strange things started happening at the house that he brought his family up in. And we started hearing the footsteps going up and down the steps. Is the first thing my dad started experiencing. He thought it was me and my brother not being in bed at night. So he kept hearing it, kept screaming at us. My mom's like, it's not them. And eventually she discovered that she believed that it was the man who killed himself. Dad said it was bull crap. He went up there to try to catch us. Of course, we're sound asleep in her bed. No explanation for it. So to consolidate this 10-year period that I'm going to lead up to, things would happen mildly at what you would experience in hauntings. Strange sensations of being watched, invisible presences in the room, creepy vibes, footsteps, weird noises, some evidence of psychokinetic manifestations like light anomalies, shadow anomalies, that kind of stuff. But fast forward 10 years, I have a son. Now my mom and dad's divorced. The house is more dilapidated. Activity has become higher. And it's just me, my dad, and my kid, my 2.5-year-old kid in the house living. But one day, me and my son are upstairs in the bedroom. And this was years. We haven't mentioned the firefighter's name in 10 years, 5 years. I don't know, just years. And he's just now starting to talk in sentences. So I sitting there talking to him. He's like, I was playing with a man named John the other day, or something like to that effect. And I'm like, John, you talking about my dad, your grandpa John? Because his name's coincidentally John. And he looks at me in my eyes. He says, no, John R., he's dead. Like it was a normal thing to say. And it just so happened that the firefighter's name is John R. And he, in fact, is dead. So that was when I changed. And couple that with my dad's heart exploding out of his mouth at the age of 54 in 2011. Those two events changed me, taught me about what I am afraid of, what truly matters, and there is life after death in some way that we can perceive it and such. Whether it is or not, I'm not certain, but our human consciousness can definitely perceive it like that. So I knew something was going on, and I want to figure it out if I can.
And there you have it, folks.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I was just sorry. I was kind of taken aback by the way you described your father. So
I was too.
Yeah.
So I was just, yeah.
It's very hard to kind of deliver it in a way that I feel like it's, I don't know what's the right way. He died. He had a heart attack at work, and it was fucking horrible to see that and experience that. And the only way I know is to do it in a dry manner without, going back there. So I apologize.
No.
That's fine.
That's not what we're saying. Don't apologize.
Okay.
Just taking it, just soaking that up. Not to mention your story is very similar to mine.
That's interesting.
My son was the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
And he was at 2 years old talking about siblings he didn't know he had that I had lost.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what pulled me out of the broom closet. And I had been locked in there for almost 20 years.
I'm not going back to that broom closet.
No. So,
well, before we, because we're down to the last few minutes of the show, so before we get to wrapping it up, there was another location that you did investigate, the bar there. It was Griffin. What was it? Griffin's.
It's just been purchased. I forget that. I can never remember the guy's name, but he's renamed it Griffin's Blind Tiger. It was Centerfield Bar. Had a lot of names, layered history, but old bars are interesting. They're like cesspools of energy. It's like a mini recipe of a haunting inside of a bigger recipe. It's like, it's crazy. Bars are crazy. So you definitely should go check it out. It is available for investigations. You probably want to get a hold of if you can't get a hold of the owner, there is a Facebook page called the Griffin's Blind Tiger that Brandy Reeder helps manage. You probably should be able to get in there. Last time I checked, if you're in that area, it's definitely active. And one of my cameramen definitely had an awakening of what the hell is going on there. He got a taste of mom is what happened. And I would be interested to know what Vanessa thinks of my mother. That's the one thing I wanted to get some feedback of, because she's an enigma.
No, I would enjoy meeting her. I think she and I would have a blast at a location. I would actually love to have me on one side of a place and her completely on the other one, and compare notes.
Right. You're going to see sides of me that I don't always put out there. I believe everybody has psychic ability. I think everybody should,
to some degree or another. Yeah.
I think everybody should try to open themselves up to the possibility and see what happens. You may be surprised of going down that road. But you'll definitely see some, not science Justin in the film. If that is an incentive.
That's okay. That's balance.
It is okay. It is.
That's balance.
It's interesting to see mother and son as a duo too. That's a whole other.
That's an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Robert Hanna was wondering if the hauntings around Hartford City are more residual in nature.
Just whatever you can possibly imagine. How do I explain this? I just think that everywhere you go has the potential of residual phenomena being there, interactive or intelligent entities or consciousnesses being there everywhere, all around you, saturated throughout space and time. What's interesting about the paranormal is why it seems emergent in a way that's unpredictable to most people. Some people, like Vanessa, even my mom, they have to hide in the mountains and put a bubble around them to escape it.
And even then it don't work.
As hard as they may try. So it's not that where it is and how often it is, it's everywhere. But why is it only there at moments for some, more for others, and all the time for few? That's the question I want you to take away from this show.
That's a good question.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's based on fear.
There's no one answer that's going to answer it.
I think it's based on fear and on the fact that, let's face it, sometimes you have other things on your mind and you don't see what's right in front of you. Or
Me and my mom.
Or you want to see it so bad you can't see it at all.
We talk about analogies that involve tuning the television or the radio. There's many vibrational frequencies. There's things operating on different vibrations. And our consciousness can be used as a tuning knob. Uh-huh. So, everybody knows that our brain waves go through a phase of change while we're awake, while we're asleep, and who knows? So you take that and you try to apply it to our perception of paranormal things. Are we perceiving things? Is the correlation of our perception and experiences to do with how our minds and senses go through different changes of frequency, of vibration? That's something I really want to do research.
Yeah, we've talked before about people, each person individually vibrating at different levels, and depending on how the activity is vibrating, how you may be able to tune into it or perceive it or what have you. So that makes sense.
It's complex. It feels like it's not like individual stations. Like there's bandwidth. Like FM, you might hear 101.9 on a few stations before and after, but not as clear. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there's other dimensions and realities that we may perceive as ghosts or the paranormal realm that has a bandwidth. So we're on a station, but there's a bandwidth. So you can tune to a spectrum of the bandwidth, and there might be other things there. You know what I'm saying? So that's the analogy I got.
So maybe the more in tune we get, the bigger our antenna.
Sure.
That works.
Some people are born with the kick-ass antenna. Some people have to make their own. I don't know.
Well, I was born with a kick-ass antenna, but the older I get, the stronger it gets.
Yeah, I feel like the older you are, I feel that, you see your kids born, babies, becoming a man, growing old in front of you as you're growing old, and seeing everybody else going through that, and keep augmenting your own empathy and your own consciousness through the lens of that. If you get dumber through that, there's something broke.
Yes, there is. And there's a lot of broken people. Okay.
I'm not trying to say anything bad about anybody, but it's just true.
Yeah, totally get it. So, you should grow a little wiser as you age.
Yeah,
so,
the goal is to learn.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not just about learning and growing wiser. You should become more open with age, not more staunch and strict. Because
that kind of depends on the person. Some people really get set in their ways.
But that's stagnant. With wisdom and experience comes better understanding. And if people would stop denying that better understanding, if they would start to open up that process,
yes,
they would find that all this stuff is really there.
the incentive, though, like if you talk to people in hospice or people that, someone has passed away or had some idea that their end was near, you will see a change, especially hospice people and medical professionals. My dad, a year or two before he died, he started telling me about, the haunting in the house. He brought us up in the things he saw. He was an avid hunter. He loved killing shit. And then that last year or two, he said, I can't do it. I just want to see him eat. So there's a change. Sometimes it's too late. There's always a change. Like, I debate whether there's never a change, because like right when if your brain knows you're going to die, I bet you it's going to change. And that whole NDE experience of the live flashing and the self-evaluation, I believe it's there.
Oh yeah.
All right. And on that, we are at our hour mark. Justin, where can everybody find, where can they find a documentary? Where can they find your channel? All of that great stuff.
Interfacedeath.net or .com. It gives you all the social media accounts, gives you the YouTube channel, it gives you access to the documentary. If you subscribe to the mailing list, you will never miss an update for anything. Facebook and Twitter is a good source of updates and information. YouTube has over 500 videos of the last 7 years of my research. Interface Death, Paranormal Research on YouTube. That's the channel. And Interface Death Live is where we broadcast our live content. We do shows like Mike does, and I blab my mouth all over the internet, and I feel like, I get to meet people and, talk about things and see other, learn from others and interact. So, that's where you get the documentary. That's where you find all the stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I did
Thank you guys.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
I did put the link for the channel down in the description. Quarantine Ghost has been putting the links for everything else, including the website, in the chat. So be sure to check all of that out. Justin, my friend, thank you for coming back on the show. It's always a great time having you here, and you're very intelligent guy, and I always appreciate, when you ask questions on our show, when you're there in the chat room, I always appreciate the questions from you, because they're always very well thought out. So thanks for coming back.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having the show. I think it's great.
Absolutely.
This was fun. Remember witchcraft, honey. Okay.
Witchcraft is not bad.
All right. You take care.
Thanks.
Bye, bud.
All right, Justin Brown. So
I had to give him shit over that.
Oh, I know.
And he knew I was gonna too. He knew
it was coming. He knew it was coming. So, all right. So that was Justin Brown, Interface Death. Be sure to check out his documentary. We'll bring it back up here real quick for you. Haunted Hartford City. You can find that at interfacedeath.net or .com. So be sure to check that out. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the shout-outs. I want to thank, of course, Quarantine Ghost down in the chat for moderating down there, feeding me the questions. He had to block and ban somebody earlier, so we appreciate all that.
I blocked him.
No, you blocked him on your personal, but
okay.
Yeah, Quarantine Ghost blocked it for the channel. So,
okay.
So, all right. So let's go ahead and get to the Patreon patrons. So thanks to our Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. It's Tom McNicholas, Beat Through Airspace, Pamela Quaid, Joe Chandler, Andrew Cox, Dustin Samario, and David Yeisley. Thank you all very, very much for being Haunted Road Media Patreon patrons. So everybody else can check that out. Patreon.com/Haunted Road Media. All right.
Can we ask everybody to say a little prayer for Diane Hilbert tomorrow?
Yes. I was going to bring that up. Diane Hilbert is having a surgery tomorrow, so please keep her in your thoughts, prayers, send her some positive energy. Absolutely. So, all right. So let's get to the participants tab. So we have Andrea A. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Andrew and his Trucking Gnomes. That's Andrew Cox. BPI. There's Gwen. Good to see you down there, Gwen. Candy Orton, thanks for joining us tonight. Kathy Salinto, thank you very much. Chipper Terry, Great to see you again. Christopher Stanton, thank you as always. Derek Schreiner, thanks for joining us tonight. And there's Debbie 08. Great to see you. Alina the Fam, as always. Eva Keller, great to see you. There's Helen Espinoza and Jen R. All 7. Great to see you tonight. Julia Wilson, Leslie Fair, and Nick Moulet, thank you all very much. Paranormal Reporter, thanks for joining us tonight. Rick Gabbert, thank you as well. Robert Hanna, thank you very much. Sharon Lane, the Haglin, Tom McNicholas, Tim Schoen, great to see you tonight. Tracy Christian and Victoria Monday. Lots of people in the chat tonight, so we thank you all very, very much. And if we didn't get your name in there, throw it down into the chat real quick, because we will be signing off here very shortly. Stay tuned for Beyond the Shadows. We're going to be talking about time travelers tonight. So posted a new video on the Haunted Road Media channel last night. I know it usually comes out on Friday, but with the move, kind of been all discombobulated here. So it went out on late on a Monday night. That's kind of the, I guess the shorter version of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So we get some more details tonight. We'll be talking about some other time traveling concepts as well. So it'll be cool. So stick around here on the Edge of the Rabbit Hole channel for that. So I think that's it, because I'm not seeing any more newer names coming in here, although I'm kind of scrolling through a little bit. So, all right. I think that's going to do it. Okay. And we'll see everybody else in just there's Scotty Fox. All right. Good to see you down there, Scotty. So we'll see everybody else here in just a few minutes. Vanessa, have a good one.
Later. Bye.
Bye.